excited to share this with you. This is a tutorial on Carol of the Bells. As I had said in the introduction, it's something that I initially created and recorded almost 20 years ago. It was the year 2001. Around this time of year, it was actually in October. Anyway, let's get started. This is a tutorial that I'm crafting specifically for kind of an intermediate level, middle school students, high school students, college students, that sort of level, or amateur musicians of any age, really, but that have some semblance of literacy and a little bit of understanding of chord knowledge and chord scales and these types of things. So I'll zip right along. You'll notice that the lead sheet has 11 talking points or 11 points of reference. So this is in addition to the measure numbers or the page numbers or the rehearsal letters A, B, and C, as it were. Let's dig in. So the first talking point, and the first thing I want to mention to you is the timing. One of the techniques that I use in the creation of this is something called metric modulation. And just as the name implies, it's changing the time signatures. And so we also have to take a careful look at, well, is the quarter note consistent, or is the eighth note consistent, or is the whole note consistent? Or do those change? So if you look at the first talking point, it says feel is in 1. The whole note equals 60. So if you think of it, if you have a wristwatch, well, let's see here, 1001, 1002, 1003. So this is going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So visually, that first introduction is 1, 2, 3, 4, be do da dee da da dee da 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 1, 2, 3, 4 dee da da dee da da dee da da 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And so it changes to 3, 4, but the quarter note, it says quarter note equals quarter note. So 1 for 1. That's it. Here's the 4, 4 the second time. Da 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 dee da 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 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So there's a little bit of a math for you. The melody, of course, is this. If I add the harmony underpinning to that, delicious, B flat major 7, no third. That D is markedly absent. And it gives you that very open quintal sound. Delightful. Again, fifths and open sounds. There's a fifth, there's a fourth, sixth here. So here's a little bit different. The left hand has a fifth, but the right hand has these clusters. So in full disclosure, I love that sound on the Stolen Moments, the Oliver Nelson, those a second and then a third after that. So awesome. It's such a great sound. So this is where I sort of assimilated, borrowed from first ending. Left hand couldn't be simpler, just kind of root position stuff. So in closure of that first talking point, the metric modulation and those voicings, here's how it sounds in time. Be-do-do, dee-do-do. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can do a better job. After the second ending, it should have been played here. Now we are still in a one feel, right? Like we would call this a Viennese waltz or a jazz waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. No. That kind of fast waltz sound. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Second talking point. The melody is quite simple, isn't it? Very D minor, but I'm marrying that to a left hand that uses a line cliche. I love that word, line cliche. The first line cliche is the fifth ascending by half step. This is the James Bond line cliche. Put them together. Easy. Bottom of the page, the third talking point, forgive me, which is another line cliche, but instead of the top note ascending, it's the bottom note descending. So we have this. Da, 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 da. It's got that, the Jim Croce, if I could save time in a bottle, or the Beatles, Michelle, or you can think of a number of others. Da, 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 da. Okay, marry that with this and harmonize it. You see there's an A natural in there, which helps me to flesh out that D minor chord, doesn't it? Do that one more time slowly. Not a big deal. The right hand goes on to do this again and again. But the left hand has these sort of shells, these open, almost Thelonious Monk voicings of sevenths. B flat to A to G, G to F, and you'd think it would be F to E, but it's not, it's F to D. So it's a sixth at the end. Seventh, 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 sixth. So slowly, this is the last four measures of the first page. The aggregate, the culmination, you glom all that stuff together. This delicious B flat major 7 chord, or B flat major 9. Kind of an F6 chord. There's a 9th, if you wish. I'm not even sure you could call it D minor with a A in the bass. The G is a little borrowed, I guess. I'm not married to that analysis, but I think it sounds kind of like D minor to me, but I did write F6 with A in the bass. Whatever floats your boat. Second to last measure, which is this G minor 9-ish. Again, it doesn't have a B flat in there, but it's very G minor 9, and then some closure there with the D minor with F in the bass. So that's the first page. Really kind of exciting, and it's an adventure. I sort of borrowed and stole all kinds of different ideas, from pedal tones to some of those voicings. Really neat. Let's get one more talking point in this first segment. This is the fourth talking point. Just those first two bars of letter B. The left hand is cake. Roots and fifths. Got that sort of power chord Gregorian chant thing happening. Right hand is this, which admittedly is not the exact melody. I sort of arranged and adapted a harmonic minor sound there. I wanted that harmonic. I wanted that kind of harmonic minor sound. So that's all that is there. We have time, we'll slip in the fifth talking point, which is this. I'll play it out of rhythm. This is measure 31, 32. This is a C triad with B flat 7 underneath. Cram them together. We have this B flat 9 with a sharp 11 and a natural 13. And then the second chord there. Again, root and seventh. It's almost this, isn't it? It's almost a diminished chord. And as perhaps you know, especially if you're a student of jazz, the dominant chord and the diminished chord are close cousins. They're so close. As a matter of fact, I think I misspoke, because, you know, even in a Bach chorale, you would find those used interchangeably, wouldn't you? You'd find dominant chords and diminished chords freely interchanged. It's that tritone, isn't it? So measure 32, the second half of it, we have this A and this G. There is the diminished chord. But I've got an A on the top. Okay. And then finishing this off. This is measure 33. So it is a D minor 6. It's missing the F natural, but it's got that kind of, in your face. So from the beginning of letter B, this is the fourth and fifth talking points, harmonic minor, and then these delicious chords, right? Sub 5 of 5. Flat 9, sharp 11, 13, going to the dominant, A7, flat 9, and this is your typical 5 to 1. So, in actuality with short, long articulations, it sounds like this. 1, ready, go. Okay, I'll bring a tiny bit of closure here, more to come. This is the second page of the arrangement, and it is the sixth talking point, and you'll see that I wrote two things there under the sixth talking point. One is melodic minor, and the other is whole tone scale. So let's take a step back for a second. These two things inspire me, and I think scales in general inspire me, but these inspire me in this capacity because we've had so much sort of D Dorian, D minor, D, kind of one flat. And we got a little taste at the beginning of rehearsal letter B at the top of page 2 of the harmonic minor scale. But now we get a taste of melodic minor. And here's where I do want to take a bit of time to mention a distinction to you. And in my experience, in the sort of classical world, for lack of a better word, but in traditional circles, melodic minor is interpreted and shared and taught so that the 6th and 7th degrees are ascending on the way up, but descending on the way down, or natural on the way up, and then altered, lowered on the way down. So for example, slowly, this is D melodic minor in traditional circles. Natural 6, natural 7, then flatted 7, flatted 6. So if you've had sort of classical lessons or other traditional coaching or pedagogy, that's probably familiar to you. In jazz circles, jazzers tend to embrace that natural 6 and natural 7 the whole time. They don't delineate between reverting to lowering it on the way down. It's simply just a delicious sound to have that natural 6 and natural 7 in the context of a minor. So it's almost a hybrid of a major scale with a minor third. It is a major scale with a minor third. It's almost a less dark sound. It's a lighter sound. And speaking of lighter sounds, I love the whole tone scale. Isn't it great? My gosh. So this one is, this is the last measure, top stave of the second page. This is measure number 35, where I write this. And there it is. There's the answer right there in front of us. Good Lord, that's awesome. And isn't it marvelous that there's only 2 whole tone scales? There are only 2. Those are all the whole steps. But if I started on E, I would have a whole other set of whole steps. Either way, it's just got that sort of floating sound. And so that's why I wanted to employ that. Ascending notes with a diminuendo, ascending notes with a decrescendo. So, 6th talking point in summary, nice and slow. I've got this kind of pedal, for lack of a better word. It's an A. And again, I'm sort of using kind of a line cliche. With the A on the bottom. melodic minor. Whole tone, melodic minor. Whole tone, whole tone, whole tone, whole tone. So it comes off with a bang, starts with that accent. Diminuendo. Accent. Diminuendo. So it's a nice little juxtaposition section. Seventh talking point. Notice the left hand. It's kind of like a D minor, A major, D minor 6, D minor 7. You could think of it as a scalar thing. It's very melodic minor, but in the end there's a C natural there. I don't know why, I think my ears just told me, but anyway you slice it, it's very D minor, whether using C sharp and C natural or either or. Right hand is interesting because the melody, the given melody, now I have an iteration of that, almost a harmonization of that, parallel. Those would sound great together. And I've put a D on the top. Bum, 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 bum. So you put those together, the right hand. It's cheating a little bit, but yes, to discipline the pinky to hold it. With the left hand together. One more time. And I'm going to get this eighth talking point in here. So this is E flat major 7, A flat major 7, D flat major 7, G flat major 7. I borrowed this idea from Tad Dameron, and I'm sure he borrowed it from somebody else too. So we're just kind of passing the ball around. I'm sure it's obvious to you that this is a collection of cycle 5 examples. E flat to A flat, D flat to G flat. Sounds like the cycle of fifths. It is right from that. It's also, and here's another word that may be comfortable for you, maybe old news. I call it constant structure. When you have a major 7 chord to another major 7 chord to another major 7 chord to another major 7, these are constant structures, and they sound so lovely. So it has a really wonderful, open, bright sound. Again, in full disclosure, I kind of took it from Lady Bird. Where's it go? C major 7, E flat major 7, A flat major 7, D flat, sharp 11. So, back to my arrangement. Sorry for that. Eighth talking point, again, uses the melodic DNA. So this or this. In this case, this is measure 44. We have this. And then sort of an ish version of that. So it's not this, it's this. And then the same thing down a whole step. And so you're really using the DNA of the piece as a catalyst for this sort of interlude section. Here we are. Pardon me, please. And the chords couldn't be simpler. Left hand is just playing fifths. E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. Super easy. Fifth, 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 fifth. I tend to use my thumb on the F and the G. There it is, E flat major 9. I love that sound, quintuple. mental harmony, right? Fifths. There's a fourth here. Same structure. You look at that right hand, D flat major 7 in root position, but instead of 1, it's 9 and okay. Bottom of page 2 and into the top of page 3 is an iteration, a reiteration of the introduction. Okay. And I'll take a pause here just to kind of retool, rejigger, and get ready for the 9th, 10th, and 11th talking points. I have a lot to share with you about this improvisatory section of this particular arrangement. All right, so let's keep going. This is some of my favorite stuff to talk about. I mean, I love talking about voicings and scales and the creative process when it comes to arranging. I love all that sort of stuff, but improvisation, that's where I really love. And I have some thoughts to share with you. I'm imagining that at this level, you have at least dabbled in improvisation. So I'm going to give you a few strategies that will hopefully help you through this section. First and foremost, so this is the 9th and 10th talking points. The 9th talking point, this is letter C, Charlie, the 3rd page first measure. Excuse me, the 3rd page second stave first measure. You see minor chords, D minor, G minor. Look, Dorian is where it's at. And, you know, to cut to the chase in this particular case, conveniently for us as piano players, if you play D minor 7, any of the white notes is gonna work. You and I both know Dorian is the 2nd mode. So why all those white notes work is we're creating D Dorian. D is the 2nd scale degree or 2nd mode of C major. So if we take that C major scale, all white notes, and yet make it D-centric, the point of gravity is D, our ideas can come from there. So I really challenge you, especially at this level, not just to play notes, not to plug notes, to say, well, gee, this is kind of a gift to know that all white notes are going to, quote unquote, work. They're all going to sound good. This is the theoretical part of it. But what is most noble is the application of that theory. The theory is just the beginning. That's not the answer. That's the beginning. If I start with these notes, that'll give me something that sort of sounds good. But don't mindlessly play them. Bring some intention to what you're doing. This is a lifelong journey of making meaningful sounds out of a given set of notes. So when you and I improvise over that D minor, really trying to bring integrity to what we're doing. Second point I want to make about that stave is G minor is the 2nd chord. It kind of oscillates between D minor and G minor. Same thing, we've got a minor chord. Why not? Dorian's beautiful, man. So from G to G, but if G is the 2nd mode, or 2nd scale degree of F major, G Dorian, easy peasy. It's all white notes except we're using B flat. Same thing, that's just a point of beginning. It's really incumbent upon us to make music from that. Okay, onward. And at the end, I'll give a better demonstration. There's a couple other strategies I want you to think about. One is key of the moment. So this is just a mini tutorial, but in the 3rd stave, this is measure 66, you see G minor 7, C9, F major 7, B flat major 9. You probably already know that those all come from the same tree. That's a 2-5-1-4 in the key of F. So I would recommend thinking of the F major scale as a macro way of getting some correct notes, some notes that sound good over all of those chords, and then just trusting our ears from there. The F major scale will work over G minor 7. This is measure 66, first chord. C9, that's the second chord. F major 7. B flat major 7. Okay, again, for those two measures, and for the two measures below them, measure 70 and 71, that gets us in the ballpark. It's not the answer. It doesn't mean it's going to be creative. It doesn't mean it's going to even be good. It just gives us sort of a list of ingredients that we can use. Here's 66 and 67. 1, 2, 3. Cool, huh? Here's another pass at that. 66 and 67. 2, 3, 4. Okay. A little bit more. The third measure, this is 66, 7, 68, measure 68. Look, there's a whole bunch of approaches to improvisation, a ton of them. At this particular level, what I personally like to encourage is if you see a minor, if you see a 2-5, find the parent key. Find the parent key. You and I found a 2-5 in measure 66. That's G minor 7 to C7. The parent key is F. It's wonderful. Measure 68 is E minor 7 flat 5 to A7 flat 9. Now this is a 2-5 as well, albeit it's in a minor key. Now, this is not the only answer. I just find it convenient at this level and to sort of understand this Jack and Jill partnership, E minor 7 flat 5 to A7 flat 9. Well, what the heck? Let's use D minor. And in this particular case, I recommend D harmonic minor. It will work and it will sound lovely over E minor 7 flat 5 and A7 flat 9. So that measure 68 again. Measure 69 is a D minor 7. We talked about Dorian. Fine, I'll come back to that. And the second half of that measure of 69, I write CT or chord tones. Sometimes we think of individual scales or modes to decorate or to improvise. Sometimes we think of key of the moment. And other times, and again, especially at this sort of intermediate level, we can suffer from, at any level for God's sakes, we can suffer from paralysis by analysis or analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis, that's it. Which is, we've got so much information going through our head that there's no way we can make anything sound good. And if it does sound good, it tends to be like a math problem. It tends to be a very cerebral sort of thing because it lives here, it doesn't live here. So sometimes when I get into the thick of things, like a D7 flat 9, which is that chord in measure 69, I just go for the CTs, I go for chord tones. What the heck? If you're playing this here, all of those tones will work. Onward, measure 70 and 71 is key of the moment. That's F major. You can call it Dorian, Mixolydian, Ionian, Lydian, you can call it green jello, whatever you want. It all comes from F major. And then in the latter part of that page, the last two measures of this page, again, I label it as CT or chord tones. Those will be our friend. Let me bring some summary and closure to how I'm tackling that, and I'll speak as I improvise. This is letter C, Charlie. Letter C, Charlie. Pardon me, please. Dorian, ready, and D Dorian, G Dorian, add a B flat, D Dorian, all white notes, G Dorian, add B flat, D Dorian, all white notes, add B flat, all white notes. Second ending, chord tones, the ones that are given. Key of F major. D harmonic minor. Chord tones. Sorry, I cheated. F major. Scale. Chord tones. E minor 7 flat 5. Altered. Okay. I have more to share with you. Just one more little segment to this video. We'll button it up by discussing page 4. I hope you're having a good time. I'm having a ball. So take a quick pause, retool, rejigger, 4th page coming up. All right, so let's finish this up. This is the 4th page of my piano arrangement. You see at the top, it's just a reiteration of what was happening at the beginning of the solo section. Kind of that oscillation between D minor to G minor, D minor to G minor. And my invitation to you was, Dorian is our friend. Let's use Dorian. It sounds great. It's super convenient on this topography to have that all white notes and then add B flat, of course, for G Dorian. G Dorian. Etc., etc., etc. Just a reminder to you and to me that when we talk about these chord scales, they're so helpful, they're so useful, but they're just a place to begin. In and of themselves, they are not anything creative. They're just the ingredients that we can use, but we have to exercise our own creativity, how we make our phrases, So the sooner that the knowledge of that Dorian leaves here and more enters here, the more fulfilling I think our improvisation will be. Let's look at the second stave. So I mentioned this earlier. These are constant structure major 7 chords. They happen to be in a series of cycle 5. So very pleasant to listen to. E flat major 7 to A flat major 7, D flat major 7 to G flat major 7. And the thing that I want to mention to you is this, is that when you and I see a major 7 chord, we often think the major scale. There's nothing wrong with that. It sounds amazing, the major scale. For all of them, I could use the major scale. But I want to not argue the point, I want to contribute another alternative, which is this. If we think back to even the most basic theory, you and I know that there's a major 7 chord that lives organically, lives diatonically on the 1st degree of the scale. And so therefore, that's very logical that we use the major scale to decorate that when we improvise. But there's another major 7 chord that organically lives, diatonically lives in every key, and that's the 4 chord. And so therefore the 4th mode, the scale that we would play starting on the 4th degree, Lydian, if you will, is a very viable and wonderful, and I argue even better chord scale choice. Let's take a look. Here's any major scale, C major scale, for arguing, for demonstrative purposes. Triads, 7th chords. My point, the 1 chord is a major 7, 2 is minor 7, 3 is minor 7, 4 is also major 7. So this mode, this Lydian mode, sounds great on a major 7 chord. on any major 7 chord using that Lydian. What is Lydian? Well, it's the 4th mode, but it's also a major scale with a sharp 4. So you'll see in the lead sheet that I provided for you, you can think any way that you want. You can think that Lydian is a major scale with a sharp 4, and if you know your major scales, Bob's your uncle, you're all set. If you're not as comfortable that way, you can say, well, this Lydian equals this major scale. It's the same collection of notes. It's really just the point of gravity. So to cut to the chase, here's E flat major 7. Here's the E flat major scale with a sharp 4. In other words, I'm playing E flat Lydian. It's the difference between using an A flat and an A natural. And really the starkness of the difference comes when we freeze frame, when we throw the kitchen sink at ourselves and we say, gosh, I'm going to play the whole doggone scale. There's the whole major scale. There's the whole Lydian mode. When we play that whole major scale, we can really hear that dissonance. And that eats away. The Lydian is not nearly as dissonant. So I challenge you to think about that and embracing Lydian as one that is much more consonant. And especially if you're the type of person that's like, man, I want to improvise over major 7 chords, but I want the feeling to be placid and comfortable and home. Bowl of chicken soup, hot cup of cocoa, a hot cup of tea, a warm sweater, whatever makes you feel nice and home-like and sort of settled. Lydian, I believe, arguably brings you closer to that feeling rather than Ionian or major scale. Third stave is A9 sus4. This is any way you slice it, as a dominant chord. It's a dominant chord with a sus4, but dominant chords take mixolydian, amongst other things, but really the go-to is a mixolydian, and that's such an easy thing for us. Mixo is that 5th mode. In this case, A is the 5th degree of the D major scale. So A mixo equals D major. Sounds delicious. And then the last point that I want to make here is, all right, you and I have had so much fun steering this ship in the solo section of this arrangement, where the quarter note is slow. The quarter note is bing, bing, ba-bing, bing, boom, boom, ding, 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 ding. You know, it's really quite lovely and easy to play over. But somehow I have to steer the ship back so that we can have this DC and get back to here. So I talked about metric modulations earlier. This is the reverse. This is the reverse of the metric modulation that occurred getting us into this, which is our existing quarter note becomes the new dotted half. Our existing quarter note becomes the new dotted half. So I set it up this way. This is talking point 11, measure 82. And it carries on when you go to the bottom of the page at 86, which is this. The quarter note's the same. And listen how the quarter note stays exactly the same, or the feeling of it aurally stays exactly the same. Those 8 bars of 3/4 at the bottom of the page are exactly the same as the previous 2 bars at the bottom of the page. It's just that this, in the old time signature, was feeling ding, to ding, ding, to ding. And in the new time signature, or to get us back home, we're feeling this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it makes it so easy to do this. So that's how we get the ship back. Very brief point of closure. I'll play from C Charlie. This is the beginning of the solo section. 1, 2, Dorian, Dorian. Dorian, Dorian, Dorian. of F. Key of D, harmonic minor. Chord tones. Key of F. Chord tones. And then back to our Dorian thing on page 4. Second stave, page 4. 1, 2, E flat, Lydian. A flat, Lydian. D flat, Lydian. G flat, Lydian. Mixo. And the 3/4 right here. Etc., etc., etc. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you had a great time. I have another solo piano arrangement for you at the beginning of January. Can't wait to share that with you. I hope you have wonderful holidays. Thank you for your support in this Patreon program. I really, really appreciate it. Until next time.